Robert De Niro has built one of the most legendary careers in film history, and when it comes to gangster roles, he's pretty much the gold standard. From volatile street punks to calculating crime bosses, he's done it all, and done it better than almost anyone else. And it's not just that De Niro has played some of the most iconic mafia movie roles, it's the sheer volume of his gangster films. He's been in so many. And today, I wanted to count down what I think are the top 10 best gangster film performances from De Niro. So, how are we going to do this? Top 10 lists aren't exactly hard science. These things are often arbitrary, and I'm sure my list is going to have a few eyebrows raised. People asking, well, if you included this, why didn't you include that? I mean, without getting all esoteric, what even constitutes a gangster? In Killers of the Flower Moon, De Niro is the secret leader of a cabal spearheading contract killings. He blows up homes. He's involved in blackmail and thievery, all sorts. So isn't he technically a gangster in that film? And since it's a brilliant performance, doesn't it belong on this list? I don't want to get too complicated with it. This is just a bit of fun, and I think for the most part I've covered my bases. The quality of the films themselves will also be taken into account and affect the rankings, but more or less I think the performances stand on their own 2 feet. Some honourable mentions before we start. De Niro had a few pre-fame crime movie roles, in particular the drug-addicted Lloyd Barker in Bloody Mama, and Mario, the bicycle-riding thief in The Gang That Couldn't Shoot Straight. He's got a fair few roles as what could be considered gangsters in his Easy Paycheck and I Don't Give a Shit Anymore era, like voice acting Don Lino in Shark Tale, playing the casino boss in Heist, Dragner in The Bagman, and his cameo as a crime boss in David O. Russell's American Hustle, which contains this badass shot. There's the mafia movie A Bronx Tale, which De Niro also directed, but he didn't play a gangster in that film. He also plays a mafia snitch who has to go into hiding in Luc Besson's rather dull comedy The Family, and in recent years he had a duo role in the movie The Alto Knights, where he played the real-life Frank Costello and his rival Vito Genovese. His Costello was a bit of a bore, but De Niro as Genovese was fun. And aside from his turn as a professional thief in The Score, which I don't know if we count that, unless I'm forgetting some, all of his other gangster movie performances are in this list. So let's go. And before we do, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell for more videos. And let me know what you think are De Niro's best gangster film roles down in the comments section below. Starting at number 10, Al Capone in The Untouchables.
I want you to get this fuck where he breathes. I want you to find this Nancy boy Elliot Ness. I want him dead. I want his family dead. I want his house burnt to the ground. I want to go to the middle of the night. I want to piss on his ashes.
Okay, so this is a bit of a weird one. I don't really know if we are to conclude that De Niro gave a good performance as Al Capone. On paper, it's a dream casting, surely. Arguably the best gangster movie actor of all time, playing the most famous American mobster of all time, under the direction of Brian De Palma, who only a few years previous directed Al Pacino's ferocious portrayal of Tony Montana in Scarface, also incidentally based on Al Capone. But as I mentioned in my review of The Untouchables, I never really felt De Niro was right for the role. He doesn't have the face for it. You need someone with a fat, round face, not a bony, narrow one. And up until this point in his career, De Niro's roles were often multi-layered and realistic feeling. But the role in this film called for a pantomime cartoon villain, a waste of De Niro's talents really. He's sprinkled in throughout the film to basically show up and pop a vein by going irate at his underlings before he's taken down, and I guess, if that's what the script called for, he delivered. I guess it's a bonus really, both in terms of the film itself and for fans of De Niro exploring his filmography. It's a bonus for the movie in that you've got all these big names like Brian De Palma and Sean Connery in a film about the Untouchables trying to take down Capone. The film is not about Capone. He isn't in it much. So they could really have gotten anyone to play the role, but it's just a bonus that they managed to get De Niro to do it. And of course, for fans of the actor, they get to watch the man impersonate one of the most infamous mobsters of all time. But to be perfectly honest, this is the kind of performance I can see getting nominated for a Razzie. It's theatrical and wild, and De Niro has very little screen time to make a proper impression. It's fun, I guess, but nowhere near close to the actor's best works. At number 9, Paul Vitti in Analyze This and Analyze That. I'm mainly talking about Analyze This here, as I don't remember too much about the film's sequel, nor do I remember thinking highly of it.
You know what I do when I'm mad, Paul? I hit a pillow. Just hit the pillow. See how you feel.
There's your fucking pillow.
Now hey, don't blame me for putting a comedy role in De Niro's top 10 gangster film roles list. He actually hasn't done as many mob movies as some might think, and I think this is definitely worth making the list. Paul Vitti is De Niro doing a send-up of the kind of character he is most famous for, poking fun at his own legacy, if you will. And unlike the later mob comedies he was in, like The Family, here it works. Analyze This is a fantastic comedy, following De Niro's Viti as he visits a therapist to work out why he's been getting panic attacks. And it has an authentic greaseball feel to it because of all the supporting actors cast in the film who are known for their works in mob movies. And headlining the picture, at the center of it all, is Robert De Niro himself, not a De Niro impersonator, not another comedian to pair up with Billy Crystal, but De Niro himself, the dramatic character actor, mafia movie legend, at the peak of his talent, just 4 years off Heat and Casino, lending his talent to a 90s comedy. And he's really funny in the film, going toe-to-toe with Crystal and making a good pairing. Of course, De Niro had plenty of experience with comedies by this point, having been in the likes of Midnight Run and Wag the Dog, but he had the added challenge here of playing the kind of intimidating mob role he's known for, but adding a comedic touch. And he does a great job. Again, like with the Untouchables, it's something of a bonus, De Niro being in the film, because they could have gotten anyone else, a bog standard actor, and yet they managed to secure the talents of Bobby D. Number 8. Louis Gara in Jackie Brown.
Hey, don't say anything else, okay? Keep your mouth shut.
Well,
I mean, don't say one fucking word, okay?
okay, Louis.
A few eyebrows might be raised here. Is Louis really a gangster role? Well, I mean, he is a criminal, doing criminal stuff, so why not? Initially, many may have been disappointed that De Niro doesn't seem to do much in the film aside from sit around ripping bong hits. Another bonus role, if you will. What was that? Many will have asked. But in hindsight, rather than be a fluff cameo, it's a surprisingly low-key, solid performance in what might be Quentin Tarantino's most mature movie. Louis is a fascinating character. Among all the hullabaloo going on with Pam Grier, Samuel L. Jackson and Robert Foster's characters, the unkempt Louis quietly gets his own characterization as this small-time, over-the-hill, past his prime, jaded, tired gangster who just doesn't have it in him anymore. A hard man from a different era who's started to second-guess himself, beginning to realize the game ain't in him anymore, and he's out of his depth. I always found it fitting that De Niro played this part in the late 90s, which is precisely what it felt like the actor himself had become burnt out and tired, starting to take easy paycheck roles and giving lesser performances. De Niro is really playing against the type here, portraying Louis as introverted, glazed and detached, still dangerous and menacing, as that excellent and frightening scene in the car park showed, but all round a bit of a loser. You know, funnily enough, if you watch De Niro interviews from the 80s and 90s, in particular one he did with Tarantino for Jackie Brown, Louis seems pretty close to what De Niro is like in real life.
What was the most difficult thing to achieve for you, for both of you in Jackie Brown?
I don't really, actually, there wasn't really anything difficult, all right, about...
Coming in at number 7, Sam Ace Rothstein in Casino.
It cannot happen, would not happen. You fucking Momo, what's the matter with you? Didn't you see you being set up on the second win?
I really think
you didn't see that you were being set up on the second win? Listen, you fucking yokel, I had it with you. I've been carrying your ass in this place ever since I got here. Get your ass and get your things and get out of here.
I don't think many of us consider Sam Rothstein to be right up there as one of the best when it comes to De Niro's gangster movie roles. There's a few reasons, I think. It's De Niro's role, from his extensive partnership with Martin Scorsese, that is perhaps the least revolutionary, the least out there. It gets overshadowed by De Niro's other, showier works in his filmography. It gets overshadowed in the film too, him having to pretty much play the straight man for the more unhinged Joe Pesci and Sharon Stone to pivot off. And Ace isn't a traditional gangster. He's more of a businessman, a Jewish money man operating right at the heart of Italian-American organized crime. De Niro plays him as meticulous and controlled. But because he is our Henry Hill, he is our window into the casino world and all the crazy characters that occupy it. Once you finish the epic film, his performance isn't the one you often come away remembering. But having that difficult role of being a 3-hour film's anchor is no small challenge. And it's just a superb, fully realised 3D acting performance, with loads of great scenes like him dealing with the 2 casino cheats or his many arguments with his wife, and his great performance just happens to be taking place in a mafia film and a mob world, which is why it's on the list. Number 6. Neil McCauley in Heat.
Waingro, where is he? Where is he?
How the hell would I know?
This is the one I debated with myself the most about adding, because strictly speaking, Neil and his crew aren't gangsters, are they? They're not really part of what we might consider organised crime, La Cosa Nostra. They're robbers, they commit heists. But that's us looking from within the prism of the film's world. If we take a step back and look at what the characters do, theft, murder, blackmail, blood vendettas, it's all stuff you associate with gangsters. So yes, in a manner of speaking, Neil is a gangster, and a smooth one at that. Heat is a movie that oozes coolness, and no character is more representative of the vibe of Heat than De Niro's ultra-suave, cool, professional thief. His demeanour is badass, the way he carries himself, this swagger that he has. It's something that makes you envious as a man. It makes you think, I want to be like that. I want to be as cool as that. I always liked the look of De Niro in the film as well. I remember being struck the first time I saw it that he looked really different to films I'd seen him in. The hairdo and the goatee, it adds to the feel that this is a distinct, real person. I mean, this was released the same year as Casino, and Ace and Neil feel like 2 completely different characters, even though both are reserved and refined. It's a performance that's under a lot of pressure and scrutiny too. One of the whole selling points of Heat was that it was the first pairing of Robert De Niro and Al Pacino, both playing characters on opposite sides of the law looking to get the better of the other. It was essential that De Niro brought his A-game, and in a film that boasted the talents of the likes of Val Kilmer, John Voight, Tom Sizemore, and of course Pacino, I don't think it's crazy to say that De Niro was the best of the bunch. At number 5, David Noodles Aronson in Once Upon a Time in America.
Today they ask us to get rid of Joe. Tomorrow they ask me to get rid of you. Is that okay with you? Because it's not okay with me.
10 years after he donned the role of Vito Corleone, De Niro returned to the gangster genre, giving one of his most layered performances as Noodles. In a sense, De Niro gives 2 different performances here. Playing the role both as a young man and as an old one, De Niro embodies the pride, playfulness and ego of a mobster in the prime of his life, where nothing can go wrong and he's got the world at his feet. As the older, regretful Noodles, haunted by his past, De Niro is solemn and weighty, effortlessly depicting a tired elderly man, while the actor himself was in his early 40s. Playing a vile character whose life is filled with obscene crimes, including, you-know-what, to the love of his life Deborah, De Niro has the task of adding an element of tragedy and reflection to the role, to showcase the guilt the older Noodles carried for his life of misdeeds, and many a time, it's simply through the actor's subdued, stoic, moody facial expressions. How do you take a guy who to all intents and purposes is a scumbag, and yet give the audience an avenue to feel a degree of empathy for the man? Well, there's a reason the role makes the list. Number 4, Frank Sheeran in The Irishman.
Would you like to be a part of this history?
Yes, I would. Whatever you need me to do, I'm available.
A similar role to his one in Once Upon a Time in America, something of an inverse though here, as this time De Niro was actually an old man in his 70s, playing a role that spanned decades, mainly from the character's 30s to his 80s, and similar themes are tackled: reflection, retrospection, regret. Alright, let's just get it out of the way for those who are shaking their heads as to how high up this entry is. That grocery store beatdown scene was terrible, pure and simple. But that is on Scorsese, not De Niro. You can't tell me a De Niro who can lift Zac Efron on his back in his 70s and jumps 30 feet off yachts into the sea in his 80s couldn't have done that scene better than looking like he's a PS1 character. And also the character is supposed to have a few diseases from the war that makes him stiff. But that scene aside, De Niro is fantastic in this film. In some ways, it's a comeback performance because he'd been doing trash paycheck movies for about 20 years before this film, with the odd decent movie here and there, and it went from a stage where you're thinking, does he even care anymore, to does he actually have it anymore? And The Irishman proved he could still bring his A-game when he was invested in a project. The portrayal of Sheeran is filled with pathos and quiet aura, taking a back seat to the more showy performances of the movie like Al Pacino's Jimmy Hoffa, as Sheeran is very much intentionally a passenger in his own film and his own life story. We are essentially witnessing a biopic of Hoffa, but through the lens of the blunt, quiet henchman who remains silent and loyal until he doesn't. Pacino and Pesci steal the film, but it's the final hour of the movie that De Niro's power as an actor really comes through during the film's quieter segments. It's riveting stuff as we hold on to Sheeran's grief-stricken face as he makes his way to murder his best friend, witnessing him struggle to generate feelings of remorse as he talks to the priest about the killings he has committed, him facing his own morality as he picks out his own coffin and final resting place, and the phone call he makes to Hoffa's widow is one of the best acted scenes in De Niro's entire filmography. Although this video is about De Niro's gangster movie performances, one does have to add that there's a level of poignancy to the film essentially acting as the epilogue for mob cinema and the careers of the likes of Martin Scorsese, Joe Pesci, Harvey Keitel and Al Pacino, with all the players leaving the table one by one. The Irishman marked the end of an era, and we won't ever get anything like it ever again. At number 3, Johnny Boy in Mean Streets.
How much you got, Charlie? I'm gonna pay him next week. I'm gonna pay you. You're going. You don't do nothing. How much you got there?
Let's rewind from the end of De Niro's career all the way back to his beginning. Martin Scorsese's semi-biographical portrait of a young man torn between the church and the streets of Little Italy starred a young Harvey Keitel in the main role. At an early point in the film, Keitel ponders and reflects in a bar, and then, in slow motion, to the tune of one of the Rolling Stones' greatest works, with 2 girls wrapped by his side, the cocky, carefree, blasé Johnny Boy makes his entrance, and the career of Robert De Niro was born. De Niro is electric in the film and epitomizes the phrase scene stealing. I mean, you know he's good when he essentially replaced Keitel as Scorsese's leading man after this and formed one of the greatest partnerships in cinema history. Johnny Boy is reckless, chaotic, and completely out of control. You never know what he's going to do next, and that unpredictability makes him both fascinating and dangerous. It's a breakout performance that announced De Niro as a force, played with a young energy and hunger that lopsides the entire movie, with it lighting up whenever he is on screen. It was clear to all that this guy was going places, which is why he got the role, which is at number 2 on my list, which is Vito Corleone in The Godfather Part II. Originally auditioning for Sonny in the original film but not getting the part, De Niro impressed director Francis Ford Coppola so much that he cast the man as a young Vito for the second film's flashback segments. This was a momentous task. Following up Marlon Brando's iconic role, still fresh in audiences' minds, could have resulted in humiliation and disaster for the 30-year-old, but he knocked it out of the park. His young Vito is quiet, intelligent, and quietly ruthless. Watching his rise to power is mesmerizing, and it earned De Niro an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. De Niro as young Vito isn't anywhere near close to being my favourite performance of his, and as an inverse to Heat, I think Pacino gives the more memorable performance between the two. But the reason why it's so high on the list is because it's an incredible technical performance. He's having to mimic Brando's speech and mannerisms, but deliver it in such a way where he's not straight up doing an impersonation, but that you must believe this is a Vito who will grow and develop into what we see in the first film. And he gels into the role so perfectly. You're not really watching the movie thinking, oh, that was like Brando. This isn't how Brando would have done it. You're just seeing a young Vito, De Niro utterly transformed, and playing on hard mode, given we already have the image in our heads of Brando's Vito Corleone, one of the greatest acting performances of all time. It's through De Niro's performance that we can see how Don Corleone transformed from a quiet immigrant who minds his own business to a respected and feared mafia boss. And finally, at number 1, can you guess what it is? What major performance is missing from this video? Of course, it's James Jimmy the Gent Conway in Goodfellas.
Never rat on your friends, and always keep your mouth shut.
This is De Niro, and Scorsese for that matter, at his absolute peak. Jimmy is charming, generous, and terrifying all at the same time. Think to the scene where he gives Karen some money and asks her to pick out some dresses for herself. The way De Niro plays it, the way Scorsese films it, you just can't tell if this is a family friend doing someone a favour or a gangster looking to get rid of some dead weight. Or how about when he's staring down Maury and the idea comes to him to simply wipe out his entire crew? It's stupendous stuff. I think there's a certain freedom that comes with playing a supporting character, especially in a Scorsese flick where the protagonist is often the anchor for the story and for the rest of the characters, allowing everybody else to play off him. Ray Liotta is great in this film, but De Niro and Pesci are on another level, with De Niro bringing together the gravitas of Vito Corleone, the electric energy of Johnny Boy, the smoothness of Neil McCauley, the fearsomeness of Al Capone, and even the humour of Paul Vitti, and wraps it into a perfect character. Yet another one that just reels you in, makes you forget you're watching an actor playing dress-up, that this isn't actually a real person. I would also argue that this is De Niro's most iconic role, in that, yes, there is Taxi Driver and Raging Bull, but when people are doing De Niro, when they're impersonating him, and what we think of when we think of De Niro's acting, in terms of his voice, mannerisms and expressions, the constant repeating of phrases, Goodfellas is what comes to mind. Even if they're doing his Taxi Driver, you talking to me speech, they're actually doing it in his Goodfellas accent. It's the quintessential Robert De Niro performance. He's completely in his element here, and I don't think there's many who would argue with it being his #1 gangster movie role. So there you have it. What do you make of my list of Robert De Niro's top 10 gangster movie roles? And what does your own list look like? Which actor do you want me to do a list like this for next? I was thinking maybe Al Pacino. Let me know down in the comment section below. Subscribe to the channel, and thanks for watching.